Real pleasure to have Phil Fersht today, founder, CEO, and chief analyst of HFS Research, which focuses on sourcing strategies. So we're going to have a really nice discussion about the whole outsourcing world and how it's turned upside down. Phil is calling in today from Cambridge, England. Phil, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Tell us what the lockdown's been like there, and tell us more about FHS and yourself.
Yes, good to see you, Vinnie. You see you looking well. You clearly have the best bookcase background in the industry right now. Very impressed with that.
It's my wife's library. She loans it to me a few hours a day.
Very, very good. Yeah, it's been a crazy lockdown. So I was spending my time actually, half my time in Manhattan and half over in the UK where we have an operation. And when lockdown happened, it was a choice between, I think, 800 square feet over there or 5,000 over here. So Cambridge won out. Spent the last 9 months, I think, in the UK getting used to this whole thing, getting to know my cats, my family. Complete change in lifestyle. I mean, I was traveling like a madman and I didn't realize it until I started looking back at my life and realizing, wow, it really was. I was doing the most crazy round the world trips, probably like you used to do. And it was getting to a point where you just start living that way and not even realizing it. So this was a big, for me, breaking point in my life to have a look at myself and think, I'm now 48 years old. I'm still living like probably a 30-year-old, and I need to maybe slow it down a bit, get a bit healthier, de-stress a little bit as well. So I think there's a lot of positives that came out of this thing, and I started, getting into very good exercise routines.
Oh, you certainly look good, and you have a lovely family. So I'm glad you're spending time with them.
Yeah, so it's been Cambridge has been great because it was one of the lowest risks in the country, and we have an office here as well. So you could drive to the office. So we've actually had our office open the entire time during COVID. It's still open now, but unfortunately we've now caught the second wave, which is spreading the US as well, and it's getting a little dicey at this point. I think there's a lot of concern, and people are staying home and bracing themselves, I think, for a tough few weeks. And there's talking about France is going to lock down completely. I think we're all going to have to at some point. This is a difficult situation, and with everything going on, and we just need to figure out a way, I think, through this health-wise as well as economy-wise.
Yeah, let's come to that later on. Let's talk about the industry you cover. The whole, the funny thing is, in all the doom and gloom, there's been amazing acrobatics, right? Healthcare acrobatics. In the UK, the Project Nightingale, but in the US, we've had banks issue 5 million SBA emergency PPP loans, all kinds of last mile logistics. You and I kept fed with last mile delivery and so on. So it's been a lot of business acrobatics. What have you seen in the outsourcing world that made you go, wow, didn't think that was doable, and they did it?
Yeah, so I wrote a blog about how this could be a very serious issue for particularly the Indian heritage outsourcers. I wrote this about March, April time. We're very worried for them because they had to move into these work at home scenarios, and a typical Indian outsourcer would be about a quarter of the firm would be kind of senior level project manager types who would have laptops and could work remotely. Then they would have maybe another quarter would be senior management and folks who could actually, work no problem in a remote situation. And then half of them were literally a lot of young kids. A lot of them didn't have laptops, computers at home. They live at home in very large family conditions. You'd sometimes get calls to prayer going on and very loud noises and things. And so for a lot of the Indian heritage companies, I think this was a scary proposition for them. And the Indian government reacted extremely quickly to supporting it's one of its lead industries, and there was agreements in the local government states with most of the Indian firms that they could keep, I think, around up to about a third of staff on site who were essential, and then they would have a certain amount who would obviously work from home, and I think a lot of them who just couldn't work from home they kind of let them hang around. And because they had large benches, I mean, these companies had come off a major series of growth in the last few years. Most of these companies are a little bit over bloated anyway with staff. So they actually had the ability to let a few people just kind of work casually for a while they got through this. So I think when we looked at the IT service providers, I don't think any of them had major issues on the IT side. They found ways to get through this. They worked very hard with their clients, and a lot of the clients were, I think, fairly accommodating as well. And we never got too many issues. I mean, Cognizant had a ransomware attack, a maze attack, which was quite severe to them, but they reacted so superbly in that their CEO, Brian Humphreys, personally spent time. I think he called up about 28 of their clients and personally spent time talking them through how they were going to get past this, how they were going to fix this, and this sort of thing, and it actually bought them goodwill. And you know, Brian will talk about how he had COVID and a ransomware attack hit him at the same time. Wow. But I think they came out stronger as a firm as a result of the issues that they've been through, and their financial results are now amongst the best in the industry. And it was, I think it was a kind of bonding experience for them and an energizing experience, because they could have just completely capitulated and thought, what the hell? But they actually, I think, used this as an opportunity to really pull the company together, pull the clients together. The board were extremely supportive, and I think they got through it quite quickly. And my only take was, don't let another one happen anywhere in the industry. Yeah.
So let's drill down on that a little bit more, yeah. Right? Because they recruit, onboard, mentor, train. They do it in the tens of thousands, right? And you would think the pandemics would be an existential threat to that labor-intensive model, because people cannot travel, people have to work from home, like you say. You know, I mean, multi-generational families have an issue with that. Security issues, privacy issues with working from home, and so on. You know, and how do you recruit when you can't visit campuses? So how do you think they are going to evolve? Clearly, it's good to hear short term they've done well. How do you see them evolving?
Yeah, so there's more to it than a short term success story of getting through the initial phases to them. I will start with a flip story that hasn't been as successful. So when Duterte, the Filipino leader, dictator, he shut down Manila, he did it with 24 hours notice. And it was a disaster. So all the call center businesses who were headquartered there, they had their main delivery centers there in Manila. They got so screwed so fast. Some of them literally couldn't do the job. They couldn't function. A few of them had resources in Cebu and other parts of the Philippines that they could shift to, but the call center industry got really hard hit. I mean, some clients were going crazy. I mean, there were some relationships that, you know, the clients would say to you, when this is over, I'm never going to work with that company again. So that industry really did get hurt, and they were forced to some very rapid shifts into moving their clients into chatbot models very quickly. Anything they could do to try and just keep these things going. The big thing they're pushing now is work at home. So that whole work at home model is now being pushed aggressively. But I feel COVID is going to have a big long-term impact on that industry and how it's going to run. On the IT side of things, what it's done is it's sort of globalized it a lot more. I used Cognizant as an example, but they're all investing heavily in the US in particular, UK, parts of Europe, other parts of Asia. They're putting delivery resources in lots of other locations to keep continuity going. Another thing I will add about India is they did lock down not too long after the US, and that was about the same time as the US did, but they opened up quite quickly. They locked down for about a month. Now, they really struggled in lockdown in India, especially getting food, supply chains, traffic. That country is not built for that type of thing. And I think the decision was made that this is more harmful than it is helpful to the economies. And so in India now, they've opened up. People are back in offices. I think a lot of executives are still working at home if they can, but they've opened it up again. And I have an office in India. I have staff in India. I have clients in India. It's been a bad COVID situation there. Having said that, it's no worse now than it is here in the UK. They just went straight to second wave. But everyone has a mask on all the time, and they have hand sanitizer. That's how they operate. They just have the masks on. They have hand sanitizer. They just get on with life. A lot of people have had the virus. A lot of people I know, but it's been very tough for them. But they've just battled through it. That's how they're operating. So,
Phil, I read something about the biggest slum in the world, which is near Mumbai.
yeah.
And same thing, right? I mean, they remarkably shut it down, locked it down, but they bounced back health-wise pretty well, economy-wise not so well. So, we need to all learn from, look, you can't have it one way or the other, right? And I don't think the media has been very helpful on that. We had our summer strike in the US, as you're seeing in Europe now. And what the media focused on was the positives. It was actually a K curve. The positives were going up, the fatalities were going down, because the healthcare system has learned so much in the last 6 months. Therapeutics are working, the positives are younger, healthier. It'd be nice if they presented both sides. And we really have to work through, it can't be just health and can't be just economy. We really have to be much more measured about it. Anyways, let's, Mark Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, he said, is this a pandemic or is this an epidemic? He said, we went from a health crisis to a financial crisis to a diversity crisis in the US. Now we're having a climate change crisis with forest fires and so on. There's no script, no MBA program, nothing that prepares you for multiple crises, right? So tell us about how you have personally led through this crisis, and also what other examples of leadership you've seen that make you go, wow, didn't think that was doable. I'm so impressed with what this person did.
Yep. So I was in an interesting situation I ran a company I founded myself, and I founded it 10 years ago, and we built it up to about 50 full-time staff globally. We're several $1 million in revenue. It's all cash driven. No, I have no investment. This is all run by people who love being in research, and I have a lot of employees who are shareholders who are in all employee business. So up to about May, there were about 2 days I can remember while I just thought everything I built is being pulled out from under me, and it was the worst feeling I've ever had in my life. You generally looked in the mirror, you looked at what was going on. I remember calling my mum and dad up the road and just saying, this thing is an effing utter nightmare. This is just going to end us. And it got us to a situation where we had to take a very deep look at our business. We were quite lucky because we founded ourselves as a sort of digital remote research firm anyway. We'd gone to an office environment, but we still had a lot of people, particularly in the US, working at home because that was their preference. So we were able to very quickly flip everything we did to a digital model. But we had to go to hell to get there. Like we had to change a lot. Like we made a lot of money and a lot of business through physical events, and so I had to move all our events into a digital setting. And the fortunate thing is we do them really well. We do these digital roundtables now. They're global. They're not local anymore. They're not, and they're a 3-hour tremendous conversation, and they're the best things we've done. We're going to do a huge digital event using Splunk, I believe, next year, and I'm learning a hell of a lot about how you can build those models out. We had to take $500,000 of revenue, that's a lot of money for us, from clients who had sponsored events and shift that revenue into research products. We had to do things like that. We had to take our strategy sessions and move them into online from physical. But what transpired, Vinnie, was we were delivering everything half the cost, 10 times faster, way cheaper, and the clients loved it. So we're now selling way more of what we were doing because it's faster to deliver, it's cheaper to deliver, it's more competitive. Our analysts aren't traveling, so we can load them up with some more work, and they're all stuck at home, and hopefully they like doing work, keeps them occupied. So we've bonded as a company. We pulled together, we moved everything into a digital model, and now we have revenues higher than we had last year, and our profitability is way better because we don't have huge travel budgets. But if I need to do a strategy session with leadership at IBM or somewhere, we can do it next week. Before COVID, it would take 3 months to set that up, 2 days of my week, and we wouldn't make much more money doing it. Now it's next week, it's quick, it's clean, it's done, on to the next. So we're selling twice as much, everyone's happy, people need research, they need information, but we just have to change how we deliver it all. And the thing is when this goes back to normal, whenever it's going to be. We'll probably get into some physical events again, but I don't think analysts are going to be traveling like they were. They're too expensive. People don't want to. It's now acceptable to say, let's do this on video. So it's been a huge change.
You mentioned Brian at Cognizant. Yeah. Clearly, he's had several challenges and he's led pretty well. I've heard good things about the lady at Accenture. Yeah. I've heard good things about TCS in terms of moving to a more work from home model. What other outsourcing executives have you seen step up?
Several of them, and I think one thing I left off here is to lead in this environment is you need to be the cheerleader who's always positive, always reassuring, always trying to energize people, because a lot of people are jaded, they're tired, they're terrified of losing their jobs in this market. You have to be that source of trust and energy and passion, and you have to be very honest with people. Like, I've had to share things I would never have shared with pre-COVID with staff. I've been very open about our strategy. I think people feel part of the business now. I've had to hire in talent, I've had to fire talent, it's all sorts of things, but we got into a very good place because of this. And I couldn't have done this last year. I didn't have permission to do this. Now I have permission. So when I look at other leaders in this industry, obviously Brian has been an interesting example at Cognizant. I think the Infosys team have been fantastic. They've outperformed the entire industry better than anybody. I think Salil Parekh has to get a lot of credit for being a straight shooter, no nonsense guy who hasn't done too much to change the DNA of the business. He just brought the best out of it. And Ravi Kumar is another guy in there, and Mohit Joshi. I think those three have all been real stalwarts of the industry. They're reaching out continuously to the analysts and the advisors and the clients and their own employees. And I hear from the employees how much they feel their company is looking after them. I feel that I deal with some of the smaller companies in the outsourcing space. Emphasis is it's about 1.3, 1.4 billion company led by Nitin Rakesh. And he's grown that company even during the pandemic. He's doubled the size of that company in his 3-year tenure, I believe. And they've continued to grow despite a pandemic in a mid-sized provider where people thought the mid-sized guys would go away. They've got even stronger in this market because they're niche, they're focused, they can get really intimate with their clients. They're obviously struggling with the remote model a bit, but they're battling through. Everyone is working crazy hours. The intensity is very high. I read somewhere that fatigue levels on a video call are twice that on an audio call. Yep. And we're all battling through. The only caveat I would say is, after 9 months of this, you start to feel tired. And the thing is, you can't stop. I haven't stopped for 1 day since this happened. Go. At some point, I'm going to have to take a week off and try and re-energize because it is grueling. It is brutal, but it's also terrible. It's also very eye-opening and bonding in terms of what you do. It turns you into a different leader. It really does. So
sure. Are any of them talking about automation? Because that would seem like, it's been one criticism I've had is they still seem to be very talent focused, talent dependent. And this should be a little bit of a wake-up call, but I'm not hearing enough about automation. What are you hearing?
Yeah, there's been a big flip to the cloud. I think Accenture coming out with their cloud-first renewed strategy, that shook everybody because that's like, wow, they've gone from being, by far and away the lead digital company. I mean, they were crushing it coming into COVID, and they've had to flip to the cloud where, IBM is very, very strong, AWS. So they're back to a market where it's very, very competitive. So they're going to have to really knuckle down and push that. Obviously, Infi have made a big move into the cloud. Cog have bought a couple of firms. Wipro are pushing in there. Automation is interesting. IBM have been the most aggressive by a long way in driving that. They've been increasing their automation business. They acquired an RPA firm into the IBM software business, and they've twinned software with services to go out the industry with a hybrid approach, and no one else is doing that. And I did a call yesterday with 30 automation clients, and I will tell you one thing, Vinnie, I was blown away with the level of sophistication that they've developed just in the last 6 months. I mean, end of last year, we were doing these weekly calls with automation clients, and they were still talking about, what do I do with RPA? It was just getting soul destroying. Now they don't even talk about RPA. They're looking at the broader platforms, the skills, the needs to develop. They're even talking about dropping the term automation because it's becoming meaningless. Because automation is not a strategy. It's something that needs to be native to your organization.
Sure.
So if you're designing processes today that you're going to have to flip into the cloud to survive, you have to automate them. You have no choice. And then once they're automated, you can use AI and machine learning to orchestrate those processes. But I would say that the rhetoric, the sales side has not been around AI or automation at all. I've seen it from IBM. I've seen bits from Capgemini. I've seen very little from the leading Indian firms. They've been much more focused to think on, resilience and being a trusted partner. I think they've gone back to basics a bit.
So talking about the cloud, we've followed digital transformation for almost 2 decades, right?
Yeah.
I noticed in the last 6 months, because I've been doing a number of these interviews, a lot more vertical focus, right? So telemedicine and healthcare, PPP loan processing and banking, digital mortgages and real estate, last mile delivery, automated warehouses, fulfillment, automation in retail and restaurants and so on. What are you hearing when it comes to digital transformation from an outsourcing need perspective?
So, we can break down what's happened into different phases. You have the initial almost honeymoon phase. Now it's a phase of reality. So the push towards the cloud is quite simply, we're going back 10 years. So 10 years ago, the cloud was really on its surge, and we look back, most companies didn't move nearly enough into the cloud. Looking back, they moved certain apps, certain processes, certain things that should have been in the cloud, but they left a lot of stuff not in the cloud. And then the industry quickly morphed from cloud into this smack stack, you probably remember that, and then digital hit hard. So the first phase of digital, I felt, in about 2011, 12 was, how do you respond to your customers' needs quickly? That was really what it was. It was the omni-channel. It was people going on their apps and their laptops and their phones, obviously, to buy stuff. What evolved after that was, we called it One Office in about 2016, 17. It's about how do you then get data from digital that makes you smarter than your competitors? How do you start to understand what your competitors are going to do before they know it, and your customers are going to buy before they even know it? So it's all about getting smarter, getting more insightful about how to evolve. And then obviously digital went on a rampage. Accenture bought 35 digital companies, agencies. Infi bought about 3. Everyone else bought single figures, and Accenture went crazy. And then we got into this post-digital, death of digital conversation. I'm not joking. In January, we had a study called Death of Digital, and we obviously backburned that thing when COVID hit. We've just restarted it now, and it's not called Death of Digital anymore. Digital was born because of this. Was the time where actually finally, after 40 years, I've got this chart that shows 40 years of lead up to digital. For the first time ever, we're actually forced into transformation. So going into a work from anywhere, live from anywhere model, you have no choice but to look at your processes and make changes. Even simple ones like, how do our customers get this product or this service? How do we bypass this? And you suddenly realize we've been running these shitty processes for 3 decades based on some old SAP or Oracle model from decades ago. These don't work for us. And so many enterprises have been forced into a transformation because they had to. And they're now actually looking at their stuff and thinking everything in a different way, realizing we need to actually redesign what we do so it delivers on the outcomes we need, delivers the data we need. And then we start to think about how do we actually get some technology to enable this. And I'll tell you what, Vinnie, it doesn't have to be best of breed. It's technology they can trust and rely on. I saw one of the major banks outsource, move 29 of its international branches onto Finacle, an Infosys product. Yep. And even Infosys will tell, it's not really the best thing in the world. It's kind of maybe getting a little dated now, but the thing works and it's in the cloud. Yep. And this bank just said, we just need to do something that works. We don't want to work with any fancy fintechs anymore. We just need to get this done. And I'm telling you, I was talking with these 30 clients the other day about automation being native. Automation is not the strategy. Data is the strategy. You just need to get something that works for you, that gets these processes functioning in the cloud, and then functioning in the cloud, you can pivot, and then you can look at AI and all sorts of other great investments to make it work. So everybody's just looking at be a bit more simple, be a bit more effective. And the one thing that has really become a hot topic lately is what we call digital fluency. We've got to get out of this world where if you don't do IT, you're not really involved. And if you're in technology, it's all our way. There is a genuine coming together now that you need a crystal clear vision of what to do. And that's the business side of the house. And then you need the IT guys need to understand what's the context behind the technology we have and how can we work with our business counterparts effectively? Because we've been talking about this for 4 decades, about business and IT working together. Now they're being sandwiched together, they're being smashed together, and they actually have to really make this thing work. And that's why this is becoming a very, very interesting time. It's about crystal clear vision. It's about cutting corners. We've got to move fast. So,
Phil, what I've seen is the cloud definition is expanded in that people say, yeah, we should be in a SaaS application because on-premise was a pain with all the VPN provisioning and lack of scaling and so on, but we can't afford to get there. So many of them are saying, let me lift and shift, call up Google or call up Microsoft, lift and shift to their cloud. At least we get scalability and security. And then let's look at reducing the cost of maintaining Oracle or whatever, right? So I think that is another big change that is happening, which it's broadening the definition of what cloud was a few years ago. So let's talk about Europe. You're in the center of what's happening with Brexit. What's your prime minister doing? Talk about how the economy is doing, how, what we get very little now about what's happening in your part of the world. So,
well, I've been back in the UK for about half the time for 4 years. So the States for 17 years leading up to this. Going from Brexit to this. So Brexit was dominating our conversation leading up to COVID, basically. And it was not quite as bad, but not far off Dems versus GOP. It was almost civil war in the country if you were pro-Brexit or anti-Brexit, you fell out with each other. You wouldn't talk to each other. It was becoming religious. And then COVID hits and the conversation just stopped. And the good thing about Britain is they really come together during times of adversity. It must be something from the war or the Blitz or something, but everyone came together for the first 3 months. Every Thursday, everyone would stand on their front doorstep and applaud the NHS. Everyone watched the news. There was a real spirit in the country. When Johnson got COVID and was really ill one night, everyone was there thinking, "Oh my God, I can't sleep. I'm so worried about Bojo." And even if you hated the guy, you didn't want it. Everyone was really scared for him. And then that first lockdown, then we opened up a bit, and they brought the Premier League soccer on, and that cheered a lot of people up. And I'd say in the first 4 or 5 months, while we were a bit slow to lock down, we did a very good lockdown, and it went very well. There was a lot of spirit and acknowledgement in the country, and even when the government screwed up, they would just get up and admit it, and there wasn't any divisiveness going on. Now, what's happened since then is we didn't unlock well, and I don't think the US did either. But we didn't manage it well. The minute they opened the pubs, COVID just started spreading like wildfire again. And then now they've reopened the schools. There's no choice between working at home here. You can't homeschool your kids. They believe in this country that it's an unfair privilege to be able to homeschool your kids because a lot of people can't. And we say, well, hang on a second. If a third of people homeschool their kids, those kids going to school are going to have better social distancing. So can't we just do that? But they won't let that happen. So there's a lot of dissatisfaction about that. We're now in a second spike, and there's a lot of intense debate about what to do. The government is very worried about locking back down, so they're doing it by city. You've got 1, 2, and 3 phases for lockdown, and I think they're just going to have to go into full lockdown. France is doing it, even though they're keeping schools open. I think we're going to have to do something here. I
think you should study the southern spike in the U.S. Our Florida, California, Texas have 2x New York's positives and 1/3 the fatalities. That's a 6x factor. So don't lock down because the healthcare system has learned so much that you don't want to overburden it, but on the other hand, don't completely ignore what they have learned in the therapy.
I know for a fact my sister is a NHS worker, and she said the difference today is if you get COVID, you go to hospital, they know how to treat it so much better. Like there's a much higher chance of dying because the doctors weren't experienced with it. Now they know all the different techniques and things and drugs and a lot. I mean, you saw what they do with Trump.
They don't put you on ventilator. Right?
Yeah.
So, hey, Phil, any final thoughts, advice?
I think Britain is headed for a very dark winter. Brexit is happening, and it's a little crazy that it's happening at a time when I personally believe, and this says the US as well. There's such a political fervor right now about who wins the election next week. It's just dominating everything. I've actually said to the team, don't put any good research out until after the election. No one's going to read it. I personally believe that curing this coronavirus issue transcends everything right now. It's so important. We are staring at the precipice of a potentially very, very damaging global recession. This is bad. This is much bigger than Democrat, Republican, Tory, Labour, whatever you are. That has got to be the focus. Whoever gets in next week, whoever you support, they have to fix this frickin' mess. Because that is so much more important than everything else. The future of our children, our country, the next decade, no matter how much you hate Trump or think Biden is an idiot or whatever people are doing, that is not as important as fixing this, in my opinion. That's what we have to be much more focused on. So,
Phil, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. And your son and your wife are walking around, so good to see everyone. You're close to everyone. That's great to see. Thank you.
There were. I've got some cats walking around, and
I saw one. Yeah.
everyone's fully clothed, thank God. So,
thank you so much.
Good to see you looking so well, Vinnie. Excellent.